Hey guys, Daniel here. Before we get to the video, I just wanted to let you all know I have a discount code for select EVGA products, such as graphics cards and motherboards. When you click the link in the description of any of my videos, my associate code is applied to your card upon checkout. If you do purchase something using my code, I do receive a little commission. Click the link in the description to learn more. What's up everybody, Daniel here. Welcome back for a brand new video. We are going to be building yet another PC for the channel. I'm going to show you how this time I managed to do it for just under $600. So let's get into it. As with any PC build, you have to start with introducing the parts, and the only way I was able to do this for just under $600 was buying a mixture of used and new parts. So on the table here we have the used parts this way and new parts this way. So first we are going to name off our graphics card. This is an NVIDIA GeForce 1060 6GB card. Our RAM, we have a T-Force Dark Z DDR4 Gaming. This is a 16GB kit at 3600 MHz speed. The Ryzen 5 1600AF processor. I'll be listing prices as well. And a 650 watt EVGA G2 80 plus gold power supply. That covers all of the used parts. As for the new parts, we have our MSI B450 Bazooka Max Wi-Fi. For our boot storage, we have a Crucial P2, I believe this is 500 gigabytes NVMe M.2 solid state drive. For our bulk storage in our games, we have a Western Digital Blue 2 terabyte hard drive. And for our case, we have a very budget-friendly Montech X1 ARGB, I think is the name there. It's got a tempered glass side panel, which is very nice. Actually four total fans that it comes with, and all of which are ARGB. So this is going to look very nice for anyone that would be willing to buy this case. So let's get into the build. And everything that was included in the motherboard box. We have our I/O shield here, assorted SATA cables, and being that this motherboard has built-in Wi-Fi, we have some Wi-Fi antennas to help boost our signal. So on this particular motherboard, not all of these have it, but this one does. No, it's just one side. This one says first right here, pointing that you should be installing on this RAM slot and this RAM slot. If you only have 2 sticks, of course. If you have 4, then you're going to populate all 4 slots.
Sure.
So after unhooking the little latch on one of the sides, because this motherboard only has one side per RAM slot, you gotta press hard. Press like you mean it. You did it. I heard clicks.
Okay, it just worries me that it might break or something.
You're not gonna break anything. Okay, now we have our CPU to install. The Ryzen 5 1600AF. With our CPU, if you can see very closely, let me try and not get it to reflect here. We've got a golden triangle right here, and we want to line that golden triangle up with this dot here on the motherboard. Move it around just a little bit and it'll drop right in. Another good rule of thumb here is that the Ryzen logo will pretty much be in line with the top of the CPU socket there. Then just fold your arm down till it latches itself into place, which it just has. And our motherboard is installed with the CPU and our RAM. Alright, good news, we did find the M.2 screws in the motherboard box. And here we're going to be installing our M.2 SSD. This is a Crucial 500 gigabyte SSD. This is going to give us super fast load times when we're just booting up the PC.
I don't have to take these things.
Nope. No, you leave that in place. So to install this, you already have it lined up perfectly, which is great. But you want to keep it up at an angle. You don't want to install it straight.
Oh.
So yeah, up at an angle just like that. Yep. And then press it in, you'll hear it click into place.
Thanks.
And you don't need to over tighten anything, because just wrist tight, or pretty much just tightening until it feels just a tad snug, is perfect. Now what we need to do is get our CPU cooler installed. We're going to be using the stock AMD cooler here, which is going to be plenty for the Ryzen 5 1600AF. In order to do that, we got to take off these 4 screws on our motherboard. We need to install our stock AMD cooler. If it was your first time ever using the stock AMD cooler, you would have had pre-applied thermal paste. But I used that in another video where I did the how to test used PC parts or how to test your PC parts. So I have to reapply some thermal paste here. Get your AMD logo in line with your rear IO or your rear VRM there. And you want to tighten in a star pattern, as always. If this is your first time, you want to go from one corner to the next corner, switch to the other corner, and then end on your fourth corner. You want to kind of go across all 4 screws and evenly apply pressure, just so you're not putting too much pressure on one corner. They are all 4 tightened down now. Let's bring our CPU fan, plug it into our CPU fan header right here. Just line up this slot here on your connector with the tab on the motherboard. Try not to block that at all. And there we go. And then you can hide your fan cable as best as you can, just so it's a little out of the way. Our motherboard is ready to install into the case. Yeah, let's do it. As I'm taking apart some pieces of the case, I'm realizing that I misspoke at the beginning of the video when I said everything was addressable RGB. The fans are all powered by Molex, the old style Molex connector, and there's no interface between the fans and the motherboard. Another downside I'm seeing here is that your front panel connectors are all these weird colors. Usually they're all black, but you know, at least I guess it gives you an idea of what connector is what. So if you just commit to memory that this weird red connector is your hard drive light, this brown connector is your power switch, these white and green ones are your power LEDs, and then this black one is your reset switch. And then obviously you have your obligatory HD audio, USB 2.0 and USB 3.0. So it looks like there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there are only 6 standoffs, so we will need to install a couple more. Here we have our IO shield. Now, the correct way to orient it is to make sure that you have your circular audio holes going towards the bottom of the case. And to get that installed, you just line it up with the back of your case and press it firmly until you hear it click into place. One more part of some case prep that we got to do is remove a couple of these disposable PCIe brackets back here. So we just got to bend our disposable PCIe bracket until it snaps off, and we got to do that with the one that's just underneath it as well. Now we can get our motherboard installed. One more downside about how they packaged the case was putting all of these screws in one single baggie. Now that's good for an environmental standpoint, being that you only have one single-use plastic bag, but a little bit of a hassle when you need to kind of figure out what screws go where. The screws that go into the motherboard standoffs are these very fine threaded ones. They did give like 3 different types of screws. I think we have the power supply style screws here, and then we have the SSD screws, the hard drive screws that you also get. The next step we are going to cover is installing the hard disk drive that's going to go down here in this hard disk drive cage. In order to remove it, because you do have to remove it in order to install your HDD, you have to remove these 2 little screws from the bottom of the case, and then it just kind of pops out of place. You have to slide it upwards, or I guess, yeah, upwards, and then you just remove it just like that. And it looks like you can either put a hard drive or an SSD here. Since we opted for a more budget option, we went with a 2 terabyte hard disk drive. Yeah, it's gonna have to be with the metal face upwards so that the screws actually line up with the holes. All right, we have our EVGA Supernova 650 G2. This is the 650 watt 80 plus gold power supply. Let's go ahead and get it out of the box and then get the cables that we need. So for our connectors, and we also get some little Velcro straps and some wire ties as well. This is obviously our wall power plug. We're definitely gonna need our 24-pin ATX power. We'll need this CPU connector, a graphics card power connector, or VGA power. Well, we will need a SATA power, and then here's a Molex power. So let's get our power supply cables connected to our power supply first, because that makes it a little easier. The motherboard connectors usually while they might have a split, at least for the 24-pin ATX, this one is just one solid block of connectors here. We need our periph cable, or peripherals. We'll go into, let's see, it's gonna be going like this, so we'll try and go into the furthest one to the left. This is our Molex power for our fans. We got our graphics card power, and then finally our, oh, we need another SATA power. Those go over here. Our nice label that says SATA, that one goes here. This is our CPU power. We'll go into the CPU power connector on the power supply. All right, let's get this installed in our case. Fan side down to get some fresh air. And we do have some good sized feet so that it is actually raised off of the ground if it is going to go on the ground or on a desk. Playing Tetris here. This thing might be a little too long. Good news, I didn't have to modify the case at all or figure out a different way to mount the hard drive in. What I actually had to do was just remove the hard drive cage out so that I can install the power supply. Because there's a lip here, pretty much just part of the power of the case, the power supply was having to move to the left in order to be installed. So just moving the hard drive cage out and then putting the power supply in first and getting it secured, and then putting the hard drive cage back in allowed me to install everything how the factory meant. So just keep that in mind. If you do buy this case, you do have to keep the hard drive cage out if you're installing your power supply. All right, we're ready to get everything at least connected. I'm gonna worry about just showing you how to connect each connector, and then I'll worry about cable management. So our 24-pin motherboard power connector is obviously gonna go to our 24-pin connector on the motherboard. Here we have our 8-pin CPU power connector. Being that it's a split connector, every 8-pin power connector that on a power supply is going to be split. You kind of have to hold them together as you're connecting it to your motherboard. And if you want, you can connect them one at a time because there's no little notch on it that locks them together. All right, so we have our USB 3.0 plug, or sorry, our connector. That's gonna go into this long, kind of bordered off connector here on the motherboard. We have a tab on the connector itself. That's going to line up with a notch that's taken out of the header on the motherboard. You hear the nice click, that means you're connected. Now we have our USB 2.0. We have two USB headers here on the motherboard, so we're just going to take the one that's right next to the USB 3.0 header. On this one, we have a connector, or sorry, a pin that is blocked off, and that's on this lower right corner here. Lastly, for our front panel I/O, we have our front panel header connectors. Now, if you're unsure of which connector goes to which header on the motherboard, on the actual silk screen of the motherboard, we have we have little tiny labels, but those are very hard to see on camera. But I have taken apart enough PCs to know which connector goes where. So our power LED positive and negative go on the top left 2 pins on these two. And let's see, make sure I'm correct. So power positive goes on the left and negative will go on the right. And the hard drive LED connector, this guy here, that goes right under the power LED connector. Same principle here, positive goes on the left. Now we have our power switch connector, and that one goes just to the right of the power LED. And this one doesn't matter how you connect it. You can either connect it with positive on the left and negative on the right, or vice versa. The only thing you're doing here is closing the circuit when you press the power button. And finally, our reset switch, same principle here. It doesn't matter how you connect it on the header on the motherboard, just as long as it is on the correct header. We are fully installed on our front panel I/O. Actually, no, we're not, because we have HD audio, this lonely guy over here all the way on the left. So this one is similar to the USB 2.0 header in that it has a blocked off pin, and that one is actually on the top row. So just flip over the connector so that HD audio is pointing to the top of your case. Connect that onto your motherboard. And Now, our front panel is entirely connected. Okay, so the last thing I need to worry about is managing the cables on the back. So here's our mess of cables back here. Here's our Molex fans. All we gotta do to get those connected is just connect one of these connectors into this. Is this the right way? You can tell I've almost never used these. Oh, I gotta go into this one, the female connector. There we go. Jeez. All right, so the fans are connected. Now we have our hard drive. You can see this connector has a little notch over here that lines up one way with the notch over on your hard drive. Just make sure that is the right way around. There we go. And then just connect your SATA data cable. Same thing here, it also has a little notch that lines up only one way on the hard drive, and then also on the motherboard. All right, like I said, I will worry about getting all of this cable managed so that it looks nice and pretty, and we will see you in a few. Well, here is my cable management job. Couldn't do much with the space that I had, given that you don't really have a deep portion back here. Really the only space you have is this cutout that's in the case right here, and then you can try and stuff as much as you can back here, but that would kind of just get a little messy down here. The moment of truth in any cable management job is if you can close your rear side panel. There we go. Now we are ready for the final component in any PC build, and that is, ladies and gentlemen, the star of our video is the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060 6GB graphics card. This little that way. Make sure your little tab is pressed downwards on your motherboard. Get your GPU lined up. Make sure it seats right into the PCIe slot. There we go. Just had to click it in menu. Oh, there it goes. And then use the same screws that secure the power supply, these sort of hex head screws, to get our graphics card installed. And the last step, obviously before booting it up, is getting the graphics card power connector plugged in. And being that we just have a 6-pin power cable here, we're just going to use a single 6-pin connector on our graphics card. Looks like it needs to have the tab facing up, given that we have our little tab there facing up. Let's do this peel. My princess is going to do the honors. Slowly. Nice and slow.
Wow, it's so smooth.
Cool. All right, we are going to get this thing booted up and see if it fires up first try. All right, so here's the moment of truth. Let's hit that power switch in the back. And in 3, 2, 1. Cool. Hey, we did it. All right, we got our 1600, our Ryzen 5 1600 6-core processor, 16 gigabytes of RAM. Now let's go into the BIOS. Here's our BIOS. Very cool. Well, that is at least the first test boot. Now I just have to get some games installed and make sure that it can game and do everything I need it to do. The games used in my testing for this budget PC are Apex Legends, Call of Duty Modern Warfare in the Warzone game mode, and Fortnite at 1080p. I used a 144Hz monitor and my gaming experience was very nice. Each game ran just fine with little to no issue. The settings used in each game are medium to high, with the exception of Warzone being set to medium settings given the sheer size of the map. As you can see, Apex is averaging just under 90 FPS, with the 1% low coming down to about 70 FPS and the 0.1% low coming down to 64 FPS. We see somewhat similar results when we move over to Call of Duty Warzone with average FPS at 94, 1% low at 49, and 0.1% low at 42. Fortnite continues to surprise me with how demanding it can be, but this PC still ran the game with no problems. Average FPS hit just over 120, while the 1% low came down to 49, and 0.1% low coming down to 12. Overall, this PC will be great for anyone just getting their feet wet in PC gaming. I'm very pleased with how the PC performs and with how good it looks too. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. If at any point you found this video helpful, please be sure to hit that like button, it really does help me out. If you want to see more of my videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on so you never miss another video. I hope everyone out there is having a great day. See you next time.